symptoms and can walk away free. But however, because this patient is already sensitized and has IgE antibodies in his system, it can be detected. But the key point to take note here is that the patient has to be sensitized first in order for us to pick up a allergen. So this is not like those kind of genetic tests where you test it once and know, hey, I'm allergic to this, this, and this. Even though I am biologically predisposed to have an allergy, if I don't have it, if I don't expose myself to it, then we will never know. Okay? Now, after the person is sensitized, when they're having the second exposure, the allergen will bind to IgE antibodies that's already inside your system, bound to mast cells, and it will release these mediators, mostly histamines. Now, this mediator is the one that causes the clinical symptoms. So, usually when a patient is having an allergic symptoms, what they will do is to usually pop up their medicine cabinet, get one or two of these antihistamine over-the-counter pills, and that will block this histamine. And usually the patient is fine, like is free of symptoms. However, then the question is, the one that we get asked very many times is that my patient just had antihistamine. Now, can he take the test? Will it be interfered? We just saw over here that the histamine are being cleared, but it does not affect any IgE antibodies that's in your system. So the answer to this question is yes, he can take the test. There wouldn't be any interference. He doesn't have to wait. Okay? That was one of the questions that I wanted to address. And now what I'm pretty sure all of you will know that once we have the test results, it's going to be in these EASE class forms. So it comes from class 0 to class 6. Now, these classes, if you read the results, it says no specific antibodies detected. And that's all it is. It doesn't really say that the patient will be free of allergy. It doesn't say that, oh yeah, the patient can go ahead and take the allergy-inducing substances freely. All this class is showing is that our test is able to detect any antibodies or not. And if it can, in how much titer. I mean, of course, if there's a higher titer of antibodies level in the patient, there is a higher chance of having more severe allergic reaction. However, that's not necessarily always the case. So the question is, my patient received class 0 for allergen doesn't mean he can consume food without any restrictions. No, because like I just mentioned, there were different mechanisms that can also lead to the adverse symptoms, which refers to allergy. So we can't make a diagnosis for the doctors saying that if it's class 0, he can go and have the food. If it's class 6, no, he's going to be in a very serious condition. It will always have to be in conjunction to the patient's clinical presentation at that moment. Okay? So there was actually a case where this table was translated into something like, for class 0, the patient can consume the food, and the patient actually did consume it, and there was an allergy reaction. Now, so when we're translating this table, we just want to make sure that it is as it is, and no any other misleading translation is on the table. Okay? Now, for the allergy diagnosis, we all know that there are 4 different pillars of allergy diagnosis. Not only anamnesis, which is doctors going through like the patient's history, what did they eat, what are the clinical presentation. There's in vivo tests like skin prick test, or provocation test, and in vitro test. And we know that our test is part of the in vitro test. Now, some of the doctors may still think that skin prick test is the first line of test for allergy, which it was, but now with the updated guidelines, it's not anymore. Now, this was revised in 2023, and it's from European Academy of Allergy and Clinical Immunology Guidelines. And what it says is that the patient will have to go through the clinical history with the doctors first as a first step. And for the IgE antibody level testing, it can be any of either skin prick test and or measurement of serum specific IgE. So it's not necessary that if the patient has a specific IgE test, do I have to have a skin prick test on top of it? Not necessarily. Okay. Now, how is this Urine product manufactured? So we all know that there's a difference between the allergen extracts and allergen components. Where allergen extracts that we extract all the protein mixture from a natural sources like birch, and we'll just get all the protein that is either allergy inducing or there's not, and put it into one single band. So when this band shows up, then we know that the person is sensitized against birch entirely. But for allergen components, from all these allergy-inducing proteins, we're gonna separate them out and highly purify them and make it into individual bands so that we can know which part of a birch that a person is sensitized to. Now, however, the problem is there is no international standardization on how this allergen should be extracted. So this is a point that can differentiate between our products, between other products. So say even though we have a same allergen name, say Apple for Euroimmun and Apple for some other brand, it may necessarily be a same species of apple, and even their extraction method can be different, where there can be a very much of a difference between the quality of antigens that they were able to extract. And the question is our antigen extracted of a good quality? So for Euroimmun, we always ensure that the quality of the allergen extract is of a good level. So we use HPLC method to isolate the proteins. And once it's being isolated, we are going to do a QC of each isolated proteins through multi-type analysis with Western blots to ensure that those isolated proteins, antigens, are correct and of a good quality. And after that, when the entire strip is being made, we are going to go through rounds of functional tests to ensure that the test performance is good. So I'm pretty sure you have seen this a lot in our flyers. So is our quality good? Yes, we have 96% of agreement of all the quality assessment data from different quality assessment institutes. We have collected 171 samples and did almost 600 analysis, and you see how the agreement almost all of the results are within one class difference in agreements to the quality assessment targets. Okay, and when we look at our IFU, we also have a comparison with other methods. Now, you notice that our sensitivity is measured against immunocap method, and not necessarily because this is a gold standard, but more like immunocap method has been in the market for a very long period of time. It has been very well established and it has a lot of research done. So a lot of users might think that immunocap is the gold standard, even though that's not necessarily. However, we have the data that compares our performance with respect to immunocap, and you see how you can see our performances are of 90 to 100% of agreement. Now, not only the ones that we did in-house, there is also a comparison study. I think I showed this to Thailand before, where there was a comparison between immunocap and Euroline, like what you did. And the same thing, the results show a very good agreement within two different methods. And not only that, there was a very good correlation between the between the skin prick test as well. So we know that not necessarily that IgE antibodies may lead to the skin prick test results. However, if we actually did the test, we can see that there was a very good level of agreements between these two. And both Euroline and ImmunoCAP against skin prick test show similar accuracy as well. All right, so this is how we can prove to the users that our quality of antigens are of a good standard. Now, not only the quality of antigens, we also have another advantage of our product, which is a CCD band. Now, we all know what CCD is, but when a person is positive for CCD, then the results can be a bit complicated to read because it cross-reacts with a lot of different antigens. So if you see a results like this, it's quite hard to tell which of the allergen that the patient is actually allergic to. So in this case, what we can suggest is that, see, the band for CCD is positive, so you can repeat the sample with CCD blocker. And once we did that, you will see it makes it a lot easier for the doctors to know which is the true antigen and the one that has cross-reactivity. Okay, another part. So among our antigens, I just went through that we have an allergen components where we purify each an individual protein. Now we call this in molecular allergy diagnostics. We have a separate profiles for this as well, but we have some of the components within the allergy profiles. And it comes with a lot of advantages. So first one will be that by doing a molecular allergy test, we can determine if it's a major and minor allergens. Now, major allergens means that it causes reaction in more than 50% of the patient who's allergic to this specific allergy. And the minor allergens that are the ones causing reaction in less than 50%. Now, identification of these allergens, if it's a major or minor, is important for the specific immunotherapy decision. And also, if you know which allergen components that the person is sensitized to, we can rule out the cross reactions. So for cross reaction, it happens because of the structural homology between different partial allergens. And if a person is, say, allergic to BET-V, the patient will have IgE antibodies already inside the system. And if this antibody persists and the patient has peanuts, it can also cross-react to RRH8. But because this is not a true allergy and it's only a cross-reaction, you can expect the patients to only have a mild symptoms. Now this also provides a better decision guidance for more targeted specific immunotherapy. Next advantage of doing this is that we will know which protein family that patient is allergic to is in. And if we know which protein family they are in, we can actually predict how the severity of the symptoms going to be by looking at their characteristics. Like, remember how I said that the severity of the symptoms does not always correlate to the classes. However, if we look at the specific protein, and we can somehow gauge how the characteristics of these proteins going to be when the patient is allergic to. But last but not least, I will say this is one of the most important advantage of doing molecular allergy, where we can give out a better dietary advice especially for pediatric patients. Now, if you have a child who is allergic to a certain food, you want the child to be able to eat as many food as possible without risking too much of having the allergy, right? So say if the kid is allergic to an egg, there are different proteins within an egg that has a different characteristics. So if, say, this patient is allergic to only GALD3, which is heat unstable, the patient can still eat the cooked egg without much restriction, rather than having to restrict the child from eating any egg-related food. Right? So those were the advantages of our product, and now we can look into competitors. There are a lot of different competitors in the market, but the first thing that you have to know is that we have different methodologies. So, and each methodologies have their pros and cons. And for using Euroimmune, which is a blood method, one of the pros that we have against the other method is that we can have a multiplex profile and have multiple of antigens being tested at one run using relatively small amounts of patient samples. And it comes in a ready-to-use profile, unlike immunocap assays where the doctors will have to select an individual antigen. And if they were to use as many allergens as the multiplex, it's going to take up a lot of patient samples as well. And compared to array, yes, it does multiplex testing as well, but then the cost-wise may not be very competitive. Now I'm going to go through a few of the specific brands that's in the market, and one of them is Protea Allergy Cure. So this is from Proteome MedTech. This is a company from Korea. It comes with 7 different panels, and they have up to 144 allergens in one profile, and it's divided into 3 strips. Now, one thing is that this test is actually quantitative and it has on-strip calibration. And the sample amount varies from 50 to 150 microliters, depends on how many strips it's using within this profile. Incubation time is around 2.3 hours. And it supports all manual, semi-auto, and fully automated way of running tests. And the evaluation will have to be with this device called QSmart Reader. Now, one thing for this QSmart Reader is that it can only read 10 strips per run. And whereas they have all the other automated machines that is actually quite comparable to our EDO. And this, on your right, this is how a strip looks like. When we're doing a direct comparison with us, I mean, yes, it is a multi-parameter and we are using the same blood technique. But for our Euroimmune, we are actually doing a semi-quantitative, whereas they are reporting quantitative. And for the volume per test, actually, for per strip, Protea Q is actually smaller than ours. However, if you look at the total number of allergens that they provide, we are almost twice the number as what they offer. And the part that I just mentioned about the protein components, the molecular components of an allergy that they provide is only 3 compared to ours, where we have 37 molecular allergens. Processing, yes, both of us can do manual, semi-automated, and fully automated, and we don't allow random access in the middle of the run. Assay time, Euroline is slightly longer than Protea Q. And one thing is that even though the Protea Q has CCD marker to show that yes, if there is any CCD antibodies, they do not provide with a blocker. So if the customer asks, okay, now we know that there's an interference on the strip and we know that this is due to CCD markers, now what do? We can actually provide them with a blocker, whereas Protea Q, I don't know how they're going to say it. For pricing wise, we have no data on it. So this is the comparison. And one more thing, in terms of their quality of the performance, there is actually some tests done to show like the accuracy between immunocap methods. If you see their accuracy it is actually quite good. But one thing that we have to know while interpreting this research is that as it goes to the quantitative results as how they report, you see how the accuracy are getting less and less, and it's not very correlated to the line in the middle. Okay, so that was for Protea. And there's another brand called array diagnostics allergy that provide Alex. Now, for this test is an array method and it uses 295 allergens in one incubation. Also, this is a quantitative test and it uses around 100 microliter sample volume. Assay incubation time is slightly higher and it only supports manual or fully automated run. And the results are standardized by correction factors. And one interesting thing about this is that their standard buffer already includes a CCD blocker. So every run, their CCD antibodies would have been blocked. Now, for the fully automated machines, they have these two, where for the smaller instruments, it can run 10 samples per run, whereas for the bigger instruments like ours, it can run 50 samples. But when we're doing a direct comparison between Euroline and Alex, the test principle is different, and the how we report it is different as well. But volume per test is around 100 microliters, and Alex has a lot more molecular components than ours, I'll have to say. But in terms of the CCD, but one thing for their CCD marker is that they have sorry, yeah. So there was this research on their CCD blocker on questioning the efficiency. They were suggesting that it's not as efficient as others in blocking the CCD antibodies for their every single run. Okay, so this is a comparison. And those two were the brands that I prepared for the allergy. Now we can go on to my food profile. I am pretty sure that you guys are already familiar of what my food profile is, but this is the test that detects IgG antibodies. So in healthy intestines, the intestinal wall is usually intact and the undigested food can't really pass through. And even though they did, your body system can effectively clear it by forming an antigen antibody complex. And those complexes can be effectively removed by macrophages. However, so there won't be any symptoms. However, for those cases where the intestinal wall is compromised due to stress, there are higher amounts of undigested food that can pass through and may lead to excessive antigen antibody complexes being formed. And if this complex passes the capacity of immune cells that can effectively clear them, those will travel through your bodies and may cause deposits and inflammations. But the good news is once the triggers are identified and avoided for a period of time, the inflammation can subside and there won't be any more symptoms. Another case is that even though you have a healthy gut, if you have a low or compromised immune system, you can't effectively clear those antigen antibody complexes, and it will lead to the similar symptoms as you've seen before. Now, so the key point is that this food sensitivity is arised by insufficient breakdown of those antigen antibody complexes by immune cells, and that leads to a complaint of a patient. Now, the result interpretation will look something similar to this, where each circle represents a class, and the higher the reactivity is, the higher the class. But then the same thing applies, like the one that I just mentioned at the allergy, where these does not necessarily mean that the patient will have a higher severity of symptoms, even though it is more possible. All right. So for this, we actually give out two different kinds of report, which is one is the test reports on different classes on different allergens, and the other one is a results-based nutrition recommendation. Now, this recommendation, again, this is just a recommendation from us. We are not going to play doctors, and if say whatever is within this nutrition recommendation does not correlate to what the patient's current situation is, then they should follow the doctor's advice and not this nutrition recommendation guide. Okay? Please note that this food profile only detects IgG antibody levels. So it does not have any indication of existing type 1 food allergies, just not the ones that we just went through that has IgE antibodies, or it does not say anything about existing food intolerance, such as lactose or fructose intolerance, or it's not going to say anything about existing celiac disease. So even though both allergy and my food profile shows all green and it's all class 0, there may be other mechanisms in the patient's body that leads to having, say, a diarrhea after consuming the food. So this part that we need, this is not like a genetic test where it will say, oh, you can have this or you cannot have this. This is just an antibody testing that a doctor would have to use in conjunction to the patient's clinical symptoms. Okay? Now, for our competitors, we have this protocol footprint from Omega Diagnostics. So this is using an array method where antigens are spotted on nitrocellulose membrane, and it has 222 antigens per membrane, and they have 16 membranes per slice, and they have 4 slices per plate. And the evaluation of it will be using a flatbed scanner, and they will have their own software to find the individual spots on the membrane. But perks of this is that a separate sample dilution step is necessary. And like you see on your right of the slide, the medtechs will have to manually do a dilution and add in the samples themselves. But they did do a cooperation with Dynex where they allow a automation of this run, where but however, this is only an automation for running the test, but reading, they'll still have to use the flatbed scanner. Another selling point of this Omega Diagnostic is that they have their own individual application, like a phone app, where it's going to show something similar to our nutrition guidelines or report, but it's going to be in the app format. Now, when we are doing a direct comparison, this is what we have. The volume per test, a footprint is a lot lesser than my food profile, where the number of antigens we provide is roughly similar. But yeah, and the assay time is slightly shorter than ours. However, the biggest perk is that they will have to do a dilution on the separate step. It's not 100% automatic. And also, even the reading, they will have to do it on a separate step as well. And the scalability. So if for our product, we can either choose to do manual, semi-auto, like things like using the things like EPM, or if you want, they can even change to EBO without any hassle. But there is only one DS2 they can use in order for them to do an automation using this product. Okay, so this is the comparison that we did, and that is what I prepared for today. Is there any questions? Feel free to chat.
Oh, yes.
Hi, good
Hey,
morning.
Xing here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You mentioned that we have more markers than Protea, but that's
Yeah.
in totality, right? Not like in a single test, right?
Yes, in totality.
where else they actually offer in one single. I think like their maximum antigens is like one single test can test all, right? That's what they have.
Oh yeah, depends on which profile they have. But if they have like 3 strips in a run, then yeah, they'll have
Okay.
more antigens. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think our promoted one is like 54 at once, so I was like, oh, I was a bit surprised.
Okay. Now that, can you share the slides and record for participants? Of course, I will.
One more thing,
Yes,
like
yes. Mhm,
for my food profile,
mhm,
in terms of what to do after the patients have like the results, like is
mhm.
there any uh, guideline or any materials that we can further furnish our customers? Because that's one common thing that they usually ask for the
Oh,
end user. Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's
even though, yeah, yeah.
okay. That's a very good question. Oh, this is a part that I kind of like risks through, but when I'll show you when you're looking at the nutrition guide that is being provided, it's actually a very thick booklet. So that is
Oh,
where
do you have
you're going to have like all the explanation of what this test is about, and based on their own results of this test, they're going to tell you by schedule on what to eat, what not to eat for how long. Or everything is going to be inside the result, inside the report.
oh, how when you say thick, that means like it's a soft copy like results, is it?
Well, it can so it's generated in PDF, but how it's going to be relayed to the patient is going. It can be either by software. I mean, soft copy, or they can even print it out.
Right. Do we have like a sample of it?
Of course, I'll just bring up one here.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. Now, can you see my screen? There you go. So this is how the nutrition guide looks like. So this is actually a personal guide, and it will start off with, say, what a food sensitivity is. If you see this, this is from the slide as well. It's going to explain to you why are they having this adverse reaction when consuming certain foods, and through this mechanisms. And this page will tell you how should they interpret the results. So say if it's of 4 reds plus 4, it means it triggers a very strong IgG immune reaction, and you should completely avoid the foods for at least 12 weeks. All this kind of thing. And if you scroll down further, it will tell you tell here. It will tell you based on your own results. So which are the reactivity that has been identified for you, and it will even tell you the information of the things that's triggering the IgG reaction. So like this, and what you can eat else in order to get the nutrients for not eating these. And yeah, So it's going to like recommend you based on your results. So if you should be avoiding or if you should be rotating, and if you should be avoiding, then for how long? Now, but the thing is, even though it did say you should be avoiding for 12 weeks, then like I mentioned multiple times, it will have to be in conjunctions to the doctor's advice, right? So this table is how we advise them to rotate their food. If it's in all the food in category of class 3, you should eat one in Monday, then the next round is going to be on Friday, so on and so forth. Okay? Is that
Right.
okay for you?
Thanks.
Mm.
Yeah, it's great. Like, could you provide this also so that we can share with our users,
Sure, of
like
course
as
I can
something
do
that
that.
they can make a simplified version, perhaps, for their
All right.
own clinics.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Now, I have a question in the chat. I have a question regarding markers. Do you have documentation on antigen details on allergy test kits? Now, we actually have a booklet um, that goes through all the different allergens and their full names. Is if that's what you're referring to, I can also share the flyers. But if you need like a very specific information as to say if it's a shrimp, what kind of shrimp it is, then you'll have to let us know, and we will find out for you from the HQ and let you know. Okay. Profile. Okay, hi Esther. Do you know which countries have used LX2 allergy test? Oh, I don't have the country list right now, but I know that they're trying to promote in Thailand, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, of
And
course, Thailand have Alex.
they already have them, right?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah. I
but
don't think
the, but the,
Singapore there
Mhm.
isn't, right? There isn't in Singapore yet. And if I'm not wrong, there Alex is like promoting in Japan as well. Sorry, you were saying something? The Thailand?
Alex has already promoted in Thailand, but the price is quite high.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
a perk of Alex.
Yeah, right now the usage rate is not much.
Mm-hmm. I see. All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right. If there isn't, then I'll finish off the training as that. Oh, there you go. Do we have any materials, short guidelines for explaining molecular allergens for clinical support? Of course, there is. Actually, there is a guidelines published by the same allergy association, EEAIC, that recommends to do a extract allergy test followed by a molecular allergy diagnostics. So if I were to share with you, yeah, so this is from a molecular allergologist user's guide 2.0. This is from EAACI. And what it's telling us to do is to determine the specific IgE against allergen extract so that you'll have a broad picture of what this patient is allergic to, say if it's a birch pollen. And from there, we want to go to a specific allergen component. So in order for them to go through like a specific immunotherapy, right? The antigen components here, I want to know about other kits too, like Venezuela, for example. Many customers mentioned about it. Okay, the antigen components here, I want. So you want to know more about if there's any components in Venezuela profiles, am I correct? Okay, oh yeah, so remember I mentioned about the flyers with different profiles having a different allergens and the descriptions of it. So it contains every profile that we have. I'll share with you guys when I'm sharing the slides and the record. Okay. So for your Venezuela example, if I can share my screen again. Now, if you see, this is the entire list of Venezuela one profile. So we have the allergen code over here on the left, and all the allergens on the right. So if you see these kind of funny looking allergen names like N-gal D2 ovulin, those are the molecular components inside a egg white. So this N-gal D2 is the way that they name a protein. So gal D is actually from a Latin word for egg, and N means it's the native. It means it's natively extracted. We didn't we didn't produce it recombinantly, and the number is just a number in which the protein was found. So N gal D2 was the first protein to be extracted from the egg, and then the second one, that kind of thing. Okay. How can I determine when to recommend IgE antibodies against inhalation and food allergens testing or food sensitivity tests to a customer? It's a very good question. Now, IgE antibodies and IgG antibodies, we have a different target group. So IgE antibodies are, like I mentioned, is a more conventional type of allergy. So a lot of allergologists will agree, actually every doctor will agree that IgE antibodies leads to allergic reaction, and on the allergy diagnosis guideline, it says IgE antibody test is one of the criteria. However, IgG antibodies leading up to an adverse reaction of a patient is not very widely accepted amongst allergologists. So if you go to allergologists and we promote food sensitivity, they might get slightly upset. That's what happened to me when I was talking to an allergologist. He says that they do not acknowledge that IgG can lead to an allergic reaction. However, then who does? We can go to gastroenterologist or nutritionist. Like those are the people, like they actually see a patient having those bad symptoms like diarrhea after eating the food, but when they do IgE test, there's nothing showing up. Then what else can they do? That's when we can promote, hey, you know what, to make your patient's life better, so that they don't have any problem eating the food, you can actually try food sensitivity IgG test. So that's how we promote different products to different target group. Okay? Any other questions? Thank you so much. If there's any other questions after this, you can always drop me a text or send me an email. Or if not, we can call it a day and I'll send you all the documents I told you I would. Okay? Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a good day. Thank you.